Fourth match of the day is coming up. RDU taking on Viper here in day number 1 of Season 2 of Hearthstone Grandmasters. And this is a matchup that I'm really looking forward to in this one because I feel like Viper and RDU have pretty different styles in terms of how they learn decks and how they operate with the deck building in that regard. And so as we take a look at Viper's Shaman, I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit more. RDU is a player who in this particular format has had a lot of success early in his ladder play. And that's not unusual, but for RDU, it typically takes him a bit more time to learn the iterations of a deck and how it actually functions to its perfect degree.
Yeah, but he has definitely got off to a flying start in this metagame. Really does seem to enjoy it. We've seen him playing like a ton of Highlander Mage, for example, at High Legend on his stream, queuing into ball control like every third game. It seems like there's a bit of a rivalry being built up between those two players, which you might want to keep an eye on as Grandmasters progresses. But we are, at the moment, looking at Viper's Shaman deck, which is kind of a new one being introduced to us in terms of the tournament, Season 2 of Grandmasters so far. You probably will have seen it hanging around on ladder if you've been playing. It's a good old-fashioned aggro Shaman, and the one thing that it's bringing into the mix that it didn't have before is that Vicina. While you're overloaded, your other minions have +2 attack. It's like a persistent bloodlust in this deck because you are always overloaded in this deck. 100% of the time.
Yeah, I actually believe that's like part of like the quest that you start with in this one is that you just start with Overload 1.
Yeah. And
you kind of move from there. The thing that I really like about Vicina in this deck is how it operates specifically with when you make with the 1/1 rush tokens. It means you're overloaded. Anytime you make them, it means you're overloaded. And that means you have 3 attack rushing minions that are able to push through taunts or able to stabilize a board position. And Vicina being at 6 health feels like that marker where it's just difficult enough to kill that your opponent is pretty likely to get some sort of benefit from that effect if they have any sort of board presence whatsoever. And I think that's a very scary tool to operate against when your opponent's playing a deck that is pretty much fully loaded to be outright burn.
And again, I think it's a pretty powerful deck, and I'm personally quite happy that, you know, aggro Rogue is looking promising and aggro Shaman is looking promising. I think it's been quite some time before since we've seen some outright burn decks actually be effective in the metagame, and that's kind of what we looking like we might have here with 2 different options. And you see Viper there from that graphic in our new format. He gets to choose one of his classes, that he can protect, so it cannot be banned by RDU, and he puts enough stock in this Shaman deck to say, you know what, I'm going to give the little Divine Shield to my Shaman class. I'm keeping that one for this series. RDU, you stay away from that bad boy.
Yeah, RDU's protecting the Warrior, and Rogue spanned away on both sides. And that, to me, is a sign of major respect for how powerful Rogue could be against some of the top decks that are in the format right now. Like, Rogue is basically meant to kill, I think, those top decks at the moment. And so when that's what you brought, I think it's a deck you're interested in getting rid of.
2 different Rogues as well. Viper playing the outright aggro version with the Zephyrus the Great, in contrast to Silvername in the previous series. RDU much more of a kind of old school tempo Rogue, Burgle Rogue with the Vendetta package in there instead. But either way, both of them banned out. Either way, Viper that has on that deck that we spotlighted, the aggro Shaman, but he is going to run into some Control Warrior-shaped problems here from RDU.
So let's talk about some particulars of this. I am seeing 0 weapon removal on the side of RDU. I'm seeing a Doomhammer in Viper's hand.
I'm seeing a path to success.
Do you keep Doomhammer every single time?
Single time, admirable. Viper agrees.
Wow, I kept the Lickum as well.
You remember what I said about how you're overloaded every single turn in this deck?
Yeah.
Okay, well now that might be a little too much, but that doesn't happen very often.
That is a very nice start. That Lickum now suddenly looks like 9 points of damage.
Yeah.
The second one, I don't know about that one. That looks like it's a blank slot.
Yeah, there's very likely going to be a Doomhammer swinging away by that time.
What to do?
The problem with just the weapon plan, and I guess why, like, you could maybe say keeping Lickum is a little bit awkward, is that, you know, RDU is essentially a taunt deck with Frightened Flunkies and everything else on top of that, 2 Wardens, Armegadillo. So just equipping weapons and swinging them at your opponent's face every turn isn't going to get the job done. You need some semblance of board presence so that you can push damage through taunts and get repetitive damage from minions early in the game.
Yeah, and this isn't a deck that features a ton of minions. You know, most of the deck is built around synergy and having explosive styles of starts. When you get this, I mean, this is fantastic. I can't really imagine it being much better than this situation right here. Nope. But I can see the keep of the weapons, because as the game progresses, the weapons just get worse. In the early stages of the game, that's really where the weapons, I think, are primed and at their best. And so I think there's a lot of justification to, even if your hand is often going to look or be weak, that the weapons are often still worth it because they just get a lot of value.
What kind of weird roundabout did we just ride? Because I liked the Lickham Keep, and you were surprised about it, and then you just ended up justifying it to me. How did we get there?
That's Hearthstone.
Okay.
It's because there's a lot of things to think about.
There is, yeah.
You know, I'm not... The preparation for us this week, was largely, I think, have to be done is when the set released. I had to play all these decks and kind of figure out how they were all working and strengths and weaknesses of them. You know, before in Season 1 of Grandmasters, it was particular matchup and then another particular matchup. You could sit down and focus and hone in on that particular one.
Yeah, we're coming into a week of Grandmasters. We've got we've got 7 mages and 3 warriors. I guess we better play a lot of warrior against mage to prep for this, and a lot of warrior mirror matches. This time, you do just have to go back to kind of good old-fashioned understanding of the game as a whole.
To complement the Murloc Tide Callers, there are 2 copies of Underbelly Angler and 2 copies of Sludge Slurper. It's meant to be an early snowball card. I'm pretty curious about the Haunting Visions. I kind of like it, actually. Like, just as a card in the deck.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Single copy in Viper's deck.
I found more and more that when I have cards that discover things, it lets me build the deck in a more focused way, so that when I get in tough situations, I just have ways to get out of it.
Right. RDU perhaps already feeling pretty comfortable with his position. He hasn't taken an enormous amount of damage in the early game. There hasn't been, a big Murloc start that snowballed out of control, and now he's marching towards Armadillo country with Ziliax in hand now as well, getting buffed up. I think Viper's gonna potentially struggle to put the damage together here.
Yeah, his fight for board has been... it hasn't been the best. I think that the Sludge Slurper here is a very good draw in regards to what his plan has been so far, which is to fight for board. Right now his hand is not offering him the ability to punch back afterwards. Right. So that's where I look at things like Ethereal Lackey and being like, Discover is a major deal right now. Like, a Hex can change the scope of the game.
Just gonna see the weapon swing and the Sandstorm Elemental though. Take care of the board state.
Little tough.
Sequencing kind of interested on the trades, suggesting Viper would rather have other totems than another 1/1 there, the way that he did it.
Elemental, perhaps, is the thought.
So many choices.
Sorry?
What do you mean?
The
1/1 is an elemental?
No, I'm saying he traded his totem after he already summoned another totem, which means that he couldn't get a 1/1 back again.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that Spell Power and Taunt are probably 2 of the prime ones you're looking for.
I agree with that.
From nothing. Power.
Ooh. I am very interested in Plague of Murlocs right now. Viper has 5 minions in play, and RDU has 1. And what I've learned about Murlocs is that, honestly, there's a lot of beefy Murlocs. You kind of forget how many of them have like 3 and 4 health, and then you cast this card with a bunch of minions in play, and you start to realize again how many of them have 3 and 4 health.
Well, I'm certainly not sure he's winning a game where this Armadillo lives more than 1 turn.
Yeah, so that would...
So if he's going to kill it, would you rather overload yourself for 2 in the process or not? Viper picks the Plague of Murlocs, but then decides to go through anyway, so he's maybe planning for the follow-up to this Armageddillo being the minion that he ends up Plague of Murlocsing. If there's a Tomb Warden that comes down afterwards.
Thinking Ziliax perhaps as well.
Sure, yeah, also very relevant. And hey, that second Lickum is coming to play.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he was overloaded this turn, it gave him something to do with it.
Yep.
I think the Doomhammer has a pretty reasonable chance to stay in hand until he's actually substantiated the position where he knows he can just go face the rest of the time.
Right.
Or Rockbiter and very hefty damage afterwards. Wow, that 0-9 looks awfully tempting.
Yeah, that's 9 extra health. I feel like if you desperately need to play something this turn, you might end up taking it.
I gotta move.
He has the Restless Mummy you can play.
Right, it's kind of what's leaning me away from it. It's like I don't think you necessarily need something to just fill your curve this turn. So Rotten Applebaum and Armageddillo are just both pretty powerful in their own right. Yep, I like this. Lot of respect to a spell damage totem. Left 2 extra damage in play to respect a totem that adds 1 damage to each spell you cast against a 5-card hand. I'm not entirely sure that math adds up.
What to do?
I wanted to kill a 2-1 there.
I will say, it's not that simple because this way he still has a 3-1, whereas the other way he doesn't. Which does make it seem a lot more reasonable when you look at it that way.
I'm telling you, there's a lot more chunky Murlocs than you think.
How do you know how many chunky Murlocs I think there are? I find that statement very presumptuous.
It is very presumptuous.
Borderline offensive.
Good.
Good.
I'm offended by your presence.
Good is an excellent answer. Really a huge impact on what lives here as long as it just wasn't RDU's minion. That was the only real bad one in that position.
Underbelly Angler. That would have been the primed one for
Yeah, sure.
Viper.
Sure, yeah, that's the one that had the big upside, yeah. Time for Viper to get cooking, yeah.
Well, this is just a tough spot. I mean, so RDU's now down a Brawl. There is Plague of Wrath in the deck for RDU. Yet to see a Warpath. When you're approaching turn 8, I don't think you can keep holding back. I think you have to start taking a more aggressive stance in this spot. It's just how much is that, and what does that mean? And it's going to hold back the Murloc Tidecaller with heat to an Underbelly Angler drawn from the deck.
Viper continuing to play for board here. It's important to recognize as well that he saw an Armageddillo activate, and then he's seen a Taunt minion get played that was buffed in the Frightened Flunge. So there is a world where there are no further buffed Taunt minions in RDU's hand. Unfortunately, that is not the reality that Viper faces, but it's something that you can consider. And now, there's a plan.
That's 18 in the immediacy.
Yep.
So I'm smelling Haunting Visions this turn.
What to do?
Well, if you're Haunting Visions, you can't get the Doomhammer Rockbiter weapon all through to face now.
Yeah, I guess that is a major concern, is having that push happen. And then also it takes away your opportunity to Haunting Visions into a particular tool.
Right.
To anticipate it.
Exactly. Rather, you can't use the Haunting Visions, use a spell that you pick up and push the Doomhammer Rockbiter weapon damage through to face now. And I think that is important because it does set you up to the position where if there are 2 Wardens and other taunts in hand from RDU, you've dealt enough damage with Doomhammer Rockbiter to then get damage through over the top. Viper is just going to push the 2 though. Or the 2 extra, I should say. It's the other way of looking at it, just maximizing every point of damage out of every card that he has, making sure he gets that final 1 from the Lickham before he switches his weapon over.
Yeah, I think that's smart as well. You know, it's burn decks. It's very important to maximize every single point you can get until you can recognize the point of no return. But really, I think the thing here is that RDU has got vicious scrap count, which doesn't attach, so that way he can Zilliax down.
Okay, he gets to kill the Thunderhead that way, yeah.
Oh! Oh, this is another cool interaction with the what is that? I just said the name of that card. Haunting Visions. It sets your spell to 0 cost, so that you draw 1 cost, so that you draw 2 cost.
Oh, but he got the Lightning Bolt. There's an Earth Shock in his deck that could have been the draw there off the 0, which would have been potentially massive. Now, damage has to go into this Zilliax in order to take care of it. As you said, the setup was so nice. The Spirit of the Frog was such a clutch draw in combination with the Haunting Visions, because it gave him that out to draw a 1-mana spell off the Spirit of the Frog, which is something that is otherwise hard to do, but the single copy of Earthshock in Viper's deck was not the pickup. Nightmare Amalgam, of course, is an elemental, as well as a Mohawk, and everything else.
Shout out to the Tower Pro players.
Yep. And then, boom, 10 more coming, second Rockbiter in hand. But the Taunt Wall is now very real.
Yeah, RDU's staring at a Spirit of the Frog, though. That's a scary sight.
It is. You're not wrong. And with the Haunting Visions gone, that Earthen Might now guarantees Lava Bursts from Viper's deck as well.
RDU knows that there's another 2-cost spell in hand as well, so he knows that it is Rockbiter, Earthen Might.
And he knows that there are 2 Lava Bursts remaining, so he knows those 2 2-mana spells draw 2 Lava Bursts.
Yeah, it's I just recognized the Haunting Vision comboing with the Spirit of the Frog as Viper whipped it into play super fast. I was like, that's the fastest Viper's ever taken a turn. And then I realized the set to 0 means that you draw the 1-cost card and it starts the chain. That is such a cool interaction.
Imagine the Earthshock, though, the difference it makes.
Oh, I mean, I think it was game over if he drew the Earthshock. Now, granted, the fan out of it is 1/3 Earthshock, 1/3 Lightning Bolt, 1/3 Voltaic Burst. Is going to be his outcome in that situation. He's already drawn a Voltaic Burst, he already had a Lightning Bolt in hand.
Yep.
So RDU forgoes the Discover Mech Hero Power this turn to try to substantiate the biggest Tomb Warden possible.
How much mana does Viper have? 8? Okay. Not quite. He would need all 10 this turn.
Yeah, and it's just kind of unfortunate the way this panned out. However, I'm looking at Earthen Might Rockbiter, and that gives you a 5 attack and 2
a 2 attack. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, because then you draw your 2 Lava Bursts, but you only have 4 mana remaining to be able to cast one of them. If you could cast both, you have lethal this turn.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at the Underbelly Angler on the follow-up, and part of the issue that Viper's going to be having is he saw the laser go off, he knows there's another big taunt.
Yeah. Well, the problem he has is that RDU's hero power flipped over to Blast Shield, because otherwise you can engineer a 2-turn here where you jam through a bunch of damage to face and then end the turn with a second Lava Burst in your hand and just end the game that way.
Yeah.
But no, that's not an option, because Blast Shield is just there.
There's little time.
I was kind of getting around to it. It's that the Underbelly Angler, I think, would give him time to redevelop here and actually have something going.
But yeah, this is the exact setup I was talking about. You do this when there isn't a Blast Shield showing. Suddenly you're filled with optimism. RDU has Blast Shield and Shield Block to shut this down. Blast Shield, Tomb Warden. Guess that works too.
Yeah, saw Viper's shake of the head. Oh! He draws the Electro!
Oh!
What a huge draw for Viper! Deck thinning mattered! It increased his chances to win the game!
Yeah. And he made the setup. He pushed all the damage he could. Like I said, RDU had so much available. The blast shield and the shield block. Now, if he blast shield blocks in that situation, he leaves himself vulnerable to 4 extra damage that can hit him with the Doomhammer, but he gains 5.
He's dead to Electra either way.
Is he?
Because if he doesn't have the taunt minion in the way, then he just Electras the Rock Biter.
There's no Rock Biter. They've both been used. There's no Rock Biters.
Did he use?
Yes. The Rock Biter is not relevant. It's Lava Burst and the damage from the Doomhammer. That's all that's left. He gains 5. He takes 4 more because there's no taunt.
Right. You might be right.
I don't know. I don't have time to like dive through exactly like all the cards that were left in Viper's deck in terms of like damage that would get through there. But my brain was immediately screaming at me like, yeah, you just shield block and blast shield, and then like the game ends. But,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, that would pretty much cut all the damage. We're looking at 1 Lava Burst left, a Sludge Slurper.
That could find lackeys to get
Senna.
out of it, yeah. But there's nothing on board attacking.
Second Doomhammer, like, and then it's like Earthshock Zap.
Right.
Wow, that actually might have been the difference in winning.
It's
and
interesting.
losing.
It's worth looking at for sure. I definitely like can't definitively say one way or the other, but that's certainly where my instincts were in the brain.
Wow, that's pretty
It'd
crazy.
be weird if it just ended up getting punished in that one exact scenario.
Yeah, but, I mean, that's pretty crazy to look at. Either way, we got to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we're jumping into game number 2 of this. Viper taking a miracle win in game number 1 with, I think, adequately named Miracle Shaman. We'll be right back.
My name is Brian Eason, also known as Bloodyface. When I first started playing Hearthstone, the first deck that I crafted was Miracle Rogue, and it was pretty much the only deck I played. I love combo style decks. I don't like really being aggressive per se, but I like having a deck that has a very aggressive finish. I think my X factor, maybe my defining characteristic, is that I think about everything. I mean, you could say that's like a characteristic of overthinking, but I think it's important to overthink because you're playing against like the best minds, and it's important to be understanding that everyone else is also capable of doing that, so you need to be able to outthink everybody. From a competitive standpoint, I want to improve as a player. Against Hunter Ace, I think I made a pretty big mistake. I really care about just making sure that whenever I play Hearthstone, it's my best Hearthstone. Initially, when I found out about Grandmasters, I kind of felt like, it was just like kind of another league. But it wasn't until I was actually standing next to the other Grandmasters at Worlds that it made me feel like kind of emotional. We just had such a high concentration of like pure talent to actually hit that level and, rub shoulders alongside them. It means a lot to me. Playing at the highest level is super interesting because people do unpredictable things. So I look forward to the mind games.
My name is Francisco Fragale Montas. One of my best friends came out with my nickname. We are all getting like nicknames with 3 letters for some reason, like 13 years old. My name is Francisco, and Francisco's called Pancho. So it's just like 3 letters from that, P and C. One interesting thing about me that most people don't know is that I used to study ancient history. I quit for Hearthstone in a couple of years, but plan on going back at one point. My favorite Hearthstone Esports moment was when I topped like Lethal 2016 Copa America Finals. That was like my first big win, and I was very, very happy. It's like finally all that I worked for coming true. Beating Grandmasters for me means that all the hard work that I put in last years and all the time that I spent the game is paying off. My favorite thing about Grandmasters would be that I get a chance to prove myself like on the big stage. What makes me unique as a player, I would say, is just bringing very complicated decks to tournament, like mostly combo decks that people usually don't play. My personal goals this year will be to earn as much money as I can, of course, and yes, improve as a player and play the best I can.
We're amidst our fourth match of the day here at Hearthstone Grandmasters for the European region, and that's admirable. And joining me is Soddle. And Soddle, Viper's up to a 1-0 lead over RDU in this one, which means that RDU has to answer back 2 straight games, where this set is in Viper's favor.
And it's actually an even bigger win than it might seem on the surface, because I saw Viper tweeting about his lineup, and he said that he wanted to play very, very aggressive. He felt like aggressive decks had good matchups, and that he was just hoping that, you know, he could dodge Warriors, or he could, you know, sneak a win against Warrior if he needed to. He said he wasn't expected to play either 0 or 1 Warriors, wasn't expecting to play 2, and he got the 1 side of that equation, you know, playing against RDU. And he got the win against the Warrior, which, you know, when you're facing a matchup in your opponent's lineup that you're saying, okay, my lineup's a little bit weak to this, when you can get over the line against that, that's pretty sick for you.
Yeah, and so his Shaman deck comes away with a big win on the back of an Electro Storm Surge being drawn at the very end. A great setup to Viper, I think, in that regard. But now he's loading up a Mech Hunter deck, which I'll say unusual is the word I'm going to go for here. Soddle, there is 2 Harvest Golem and an Octosari in his Mech Hunter deck.
Yeah, Octodad is here in full effect, flapping around the garden, just trying to do some lawn mowing, and he's going to try and get the job done in this one, because it's... I understand it, I guess, is about as far as I'm willing to stretch, because, you know, Mech Hunter is a deck that does run out of gas all the time. Like,
yeah.
Every single game.
Like Shaman, it just starts out of gas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You play your cards, you hope they've dealt enough damage, and then if you haven't dealt damage by the time you run out of cards, which you do, inevitably, you just hope that you're then top decking, you know, War Gears and Leroys and things that have an impact on the game. So Octosari does make sense in that regard, because I think, you know, if you do curve out nicely into Octosari, there's so much damage coming into your hand after that it's going to be hard to cope with. But let's consider every other configuration of the order that you draw these cards in as well before we get too carried away.
I just liked how happy Explodinator looked when you zoomed right in on his face. Never noticed that part. He looks very happy.
He just wants to blow some stuff up.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't he be happy?
And he might have a good chance of blowing stuff up here. He's against RDU's Mage, which he's going to be queuing up next in this one. And taking a look at RDU's deck list, it is the Reno Mage deck list. And he has opted for some more defensive choices with a copy of Acidic Swamp Ooze, a Bone Wraith, and the Kartut Defender in here. Kartut Defender's kind of become a staple of this deck, so maybe not so much that one. But the Bone Wraith is not. I think that's one of the big talking points that people still have. It's very weak against the mid-rangey decks, but it's pretty strong against decks that want to all-in you.
Yes, I do agree with that. You know, 1 or 2 people, I'm not going to claim this was like a prevalent opinion or anything, but 1 or 2 people when Bone Wraith was revealed just went, whoa, like this is just like Sludge Belcher 2.0, and no, it just isn't. It has 2 attack. That's a very, very big difference in terms of comparing it to Sludge Belcher, but it is at least good enough to be a wall for a while, and I think that's something that the Mage deck is very interested in, because if it can get to the late game, it doesn't really matter how much of a board you have. If Puzzle Box is just going to nuke it away, doesn't matter how much of a board you're left with. You know, you attack 3 minions or something, you 3 2/3s into their Bone Wraith to clear it off and deal with it, and then the Mage just has Reno to follow that up afterwards. You know, that takes care of that perfectly. So it's a card that does make a lot of sense. Admirable's got the giggles because Octodad is in the hand.
It's the first card he drew. And this hand is great from Viper. He's got the Galvanizer.
I mean, this is the curve out perfectly into Octosari hand that I was kind of talking about in jest while we were previewing the deck. It's there.
Yeah, I'm curious how Viper's going to parse this out, because my head is very much in favor of the Galvanizer. It lets you suit on the Venomizer and, you know, continue to suit up.
It beats Doomsayer as well, crucially.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most important functions of this deck versus Mage, is that one of their prime tools that they hope to have early against decks like this is exactly Doomsayer.
I think RDU that might be dead.
That face is the face of somebody who really needed to draw that crossbolt.
Is a very big deal. I think RDU might have just revived himself.
It's still going to hurt.
It's 6 less damage next turn. And it's health off the board now, so that he can potentially curve into Reno and be able to use that as a board sweep.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Oh!
Okay.
And so now if you're in Viper's spot, is this a trade situation? Well, let's find out. Viper's going to look at the deck list and see how many impactful cards draw a card. What happens if I don't kill it?
Card off the top next turn is Arcane Keysmith. It is Bone Wraith. Those are troublesome things for sure. Does choose to respect it. Okay.
I like the respect of it because the poisonous effect has already done the job for the Galvanizer. Already returned Surf on that one now, so it's a 2-for-2 that took place. And that hero power means we're
It already
suiting up.
killed the Doomsayer as well. It's better than that.
It's 2-for-2, right?
We killed a Doomsayer, a Luna,
Oh,
and
killed
the
Luna's.
Crossbow.
Oh my gosh, I just forgot about that.
Yeah.
I literally just watched that happen.
I forgot the most recent thing that happened to me.
Wow.
Okay.
That's important. However,
I mean, sure.
3 points still stays on board.
If you're just going to rip the absolute boy off the top every single turn, then I guess you were fine, and I exaggerated earlier.
Well, the problem is this is beyond Reno's capabilities in terms of technical
Yes.
clear.
And the most likely outcome is the 5-7 surviving.
Yeah.
By some distance.
And there's no shortage of magnetic left.
Nope.
We're gonna have some fun.
Hey, look, the 5-7 survived.
Ouch.
I guess it's a 5-2 now. I lied.
Ouch. This is a major ouch.
Top analysis here at Hearthstone Grandmasters.
Look at how much damage. He doesn't even necessarily have to magnetic. So if you Fireworks Tech and Bomb Toss, that gives you 3 1/1s. It deals 2 damage immediately from the Death Rattle, and then you get to Bomb Toss for 2 more.
No, this is a War Gear on it. It's not the Replicating Menace.
Oh.
Ooh, I wonder what this does.
Gives you a hero power. Yeah, this is way better.
As it puts him to 8, puts him to 2. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh
for
my
sure.
gosh.
For sure. Yep. Absolutely. If it puts him to 2, yeah, you do it.
He had Doomsayer Frostbolt on the open into Reno.
Yeah. Dead. D-E-T, dead.
Wow! Viper just slaughtered him.
Nice Octasari, by the way.
Like, whoa.
You alright?
Well, no, I'm not all right. And the reason I'm not all right is because I constantly hear people complain about how powerful endgame stuff is. Just kill them.
I'm honestly super happy. I think that game was an anomaly. I don't think Mech Hunter is super powerful right now, but I am really happy that we've seen decks already. Aggro Rogue, Aggro Shaman. I think both of those decks are very viable at the moment. And I truly, they are decks that throw damage at your face. They are aggro decks. For the longest time, the few decks we've had that were decent aggro decks are you play a minion and you snowball the board and you build a board and then you hit them with your minions. That's not an aggro deck. An aggro deck just throws damage at your face over and over again. And that's what we have again, finally, is some viable decks that can actually get that done.
And the importance of an aggro deck selection is the timing of that aggro deck. It's when you play that aggro deck, not the aggro deck itself. It sounds like Viper's ready for an interview. Viper, can you hear us?
Mic muted? Dun, dun, dun.
Huh?
There we go.
Yeah,
All right,
yes.
now we hear you.
How are you doing?
Yeah, doing good.
I'm doing very good. Viper, congratulations on your win here in your first match to open up Season 2. I'm going to start off with the question I've been starting everyone off with. The changes here for Grandmasters in Season 2. What are your thoughts?
I just really like playing a new format, honestly. I like being able to play multiple decks. I like being able to play, I don't know, something that's not just standard best 1 or 2 deck or counter to the 1 or 2 decks you're gonna see. So yeah, I figured while, I don't know, testing out stuff for this format, I think nobody is at the perfect lineup yet. I think it is somewhat solvable, but it's gonna take time. And I don't know, I think I had more than 20 different decks I ended up considering playing, so it's kind of crazy.
So I do want to ask you about your lineup. It's very aggressive. It's like aggro, mage. Like, was mage just too good not to bring, even though it didn't really fit with like the aggro idea?
The mage thing was more or less, I don't rate Reno Mage as like the best deck in the game right now. I rate it as it's a good deck of every time, sure, but it's not the best deck or anything. So I figured sometimes my opponent's just gonna love the deck too much and they probably just ban it, even though it might not be the right ban because they don't respect the aggro decks or something. So I just figured I'm gonna bring Mage. The deck it's a good deck. I might end up being in the spot where my opponent has Warrior and then something that's maybe good against an aggro deck as well. So I'm gonna play Mage then, but I generally kind of like wanted people to maybe ban it if their lineup is weak to aggro because they over-respect it.
And so I want to talk about your Mech Hunter deck that we saw in game number 2. We didn't get to see too much of it because it was awfully quick. You've included Harvest Golem, which is a card I'm curious about, and you also included the Octosari. And I'm used to you having very specific thoughts on the decisions you make. So walk me through the choices in here that have rounded out your Mech Hunter deck.
I mean, essentially starting with whatever is so-called super standard Mech Hunter deck, then with the one, I think the deck is like 29 cards most of the time, and then there's this one Boommaster Flag or somebody else is playing, and I was like, wait, why am I not playing Octosari in this deck? Essentially, if I'm against Warrior, the card is really, really strong against Warrior because either you end up drawing all the burn cards, like Nero essentially, or your Fireworks tech Spider Bomb combinations. The deck has a lot of kind of combos in it because it still Galvanizer reduce your hand, Fireworks tech Death Rattles, it's a Venomizer missile launcher. So you draw these, or you draw the Reach, which sometimes misses because there's one Leroy and that's kind of it. And I mean, nobody's going to play Silence in this formula, at least I didn't expect it, even though it might still be good. And then it's just a really, really strong tech card against Warrior and way better than the Boommaster Flag or anything else. And Harvest Golem, I don't know, I kind of just wanted to play a deck full of mechs, full of those stick on board mechs, and then just magnetize something and hit the other guy in the head. I don't know. There's no superior thought behind Harvest Golem. It's just, it's mech and it's probably going to survive, and I can play a war game that I can attack with it.
All right, and so you mentioned you had like 20 decks built. This is gonna be my final question for you. What was your favorite couple of decks that you could not bring this week?
I think my favorite deck I actually ended up submitting before I boarded the plane back to Germany, and I think it's a deck I want to play next week. So I kind of don't want to talk about that, but I was super close submitting it already this week, and I don't know. I think other cool decks. I think there are a lot of different Druid variations that are playable. There are things like Holy Wrath Paladin, which a lot of people brought. I didn't expect that many to bring it. I think it's a really good deck. And I feel people underestimate how many different variations of Warrior there are, because even though we call Warrior Control Warrior at the moment, we essentially play minions on curve, and we play good minions on curve.
Right.
So you can like play a top-end heavy control, the 10 controlish cards, which are like the spells in your deck, and then at the moment you just add taunts and then some tech cards, but you can as well add taunts and bombs. You can only play bombs. You can, even in the control so-called deck, you can just play Corcoran Elite, Inner Rage, the Execute package, play Bloodsworn Mercenaries, like all these things. And I would have liked to submit something like that, but I just couldn't figure out what's the best list for that.
Well, Viper, I'm really looking forward to seeing you the next couple weeks because you've always been one of those players who's not afraid to mix it up and go against the grain with the deck building. Congratulations on your win, and I can't wait to see you again this weekend.
Yeah, congrats.
Thanks.
I love that Viper just has an explanation for everything except Harvest Golem.
It's okay. It's a mech. It's sticky. You magnetize on it. You hit him in the
Death
head.
Rattle.
It's an explanation as far as I'm concerned. It makes sense to me.
I'm used to lots of explanation. For
Yeah,
like very thoroughly thought out things.
Right.
Like, it's very German.
It's
and I
interesting
like
that like the more time he spent, on camera giving interviews like that and streaming as well in English, over time, he's got even better at like communicating those ideas. It's a lot more outgoing in his explanations. I think that's very, very nice to see. But yeah, the other thing that I know Viper for is something that we were all sort of alluding to towards the end there is he is known for brewing up some madness every now and again. I was kind of waiting to see what the peanut shaman was for Viper this year coming into Season 2 of Grandmasters, and it sounds like there's some secret sauce he's cooking that he might want to bring next week in his words. So I'm looking forward to that one.
I'm always looking forward to seeing myself some Viper matches. What can he bring to the table? And that brings us to our 5th match here of the European region for Hearthstone Grandmasters. It's Casey taking on Bunny Hopper in this one. And this is a match I always love to see because of the stark contrast in pace of play between the two of them, where Casey will often play at a blistering pace. I'm surprised he doesn't get overloaded himself, a la the aggro shaman decks. And for Bunny Hopper, he tends to take his time on just about every imaginable thing that you could possibly think of for that one, just always looking for that little bit of extra edge.
Yeah, and it's curious because if you talk to Casey or Bunny even about this, they practice together a lot. So people always ask him, like, well, how do you bear like practicing against each other? You're so like polar opposite that like surely you'd find someone that plays at the same pace as you do and you felt more comfortable. And apparently, actually in practice, Casey ropes and Bunny gets annoyed that Casey's wasting time during practice by roping. Like, just absolute bizarro world. I don't understand it at all.
Well, it makes sense to me. Casey's got to learn the stuff, and Bunny Hopper's trying to jam as many games as possible so that way he can get in, I guess, more thoughts as the game. I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic to me either way, but we are playing with Shield Phase Conquest in this one. So every player's brought 4 decks this weekend of Grandmasters, and there is a Protect phase that's in place. So of the 4 decks they have, they choose one that cannot be banned away from their lineup. Then from there, of the 3 remaining each player has, they're going to ban away one of the opposing. And then from there, they play a best of 3 match where they have to win 2 games before their opponent wins one. And like traditional Conquest, when you win with the deck, you can't play it again. So that's where we're standing here with Casey versus Bunny Hopper, and that brings us to Casey having Mage, Warrior, Hunter, and Rogue. And Bunny Hopper is coming to the table with Rogue, Hunter, Warrior, and Mage.
Yeah, it's no great surprise that the lineups are very similar between the 2 players because, as we mentioned, they are very commonly practice partners. Also, Bunny Hopper was very busy recently. He was doing promotional work at Gamescom, where he was playing Hearthstone on one of the stage events there and did not have a great deal of time to put into prepping for this week number 1 himself. So I believe, actually, the majority of the lineup building has been done by Casey, who then, weirdly, has kind of handed over that lineup to one of his opponents in week number 1 in Bunny Hopper.
What a good guy.
Yeah. What a dude.
Just a nice guy. Also, I believe he prepped with RDU this week.
Yes,
as
correct.
well.
Psycho, RDU, and Casey.
Yeah, so a lot of similarities with the lineup in terms of Casey and RDU, and by similarities, I mean identical. And there you can see the ban pick / shield phase that's gone on. They've both protected their warrior deck. It is guaranteed to be available to both of them in this match, and Hunter has been banned away on both sides, so neither of them will be operating with their Beast Hunter deck. Which is a little bit of a disappointment to me. I was looking forward to seeing some Beast Hunter today because everything we've seen so far has been Highlander Hunter.
Yeah, to be clear, not a Highlander Hunter. 2 ops. Classic Beast Hunter, double Dire Frenzy, double Unleash the Beast. Actually, only 1 Unleash the Beast, never mind. But that whole kind of package, the old school version of just making big beasts with Dire Frenzy, drawing them out with Master's Call, jamming Zul'jin, ending the game. That deck, that's what they're playing. They are not on the Highlander Hunter hype train for this week.
Yeah, so that leaves us with Warrior, Rogue, and Mage available on both sides of it. Both Rogue decks are going to be the Chef Nomi Rogues that are featured there. And we're kicking things off with Bunny Hopper. He's going to start on the Reno Mage deck, taking on Casey's Warrior deck, which is a fairly controlling Warrior deck. You know, I kind of liked what Viper had just alluded to in the interview, where it's like there's so many different iterations of Warrior, we call them all Control Warrior.
Yep.
For me, Control Warrior says this deck is meant to take advantage of the latest stages of the game. If I say something like Taunt Warrior, what that tells me is I want to continuously make sure that I am protected so that way I can build big minions across the board. And so I think, you know, Tomb Ward's like the first thing that comes to my head. And then with Bomb Warrior, it's Bomb Warrior. It's basically just a pure aggro deck.
It's basically just a pure aggro deck.
And that's where I sit with this one. But as far as Casey is concerned here, he's got a Plague of Wrath, he's got our Megadillo, he's got 2 copies of Tomb Warden, and an Archivist Elysiana up top. That sounds like Control Warrior to me.
Okay.
Just because Control Warrior's got on-curve plays doesn't make it not Control Warrior. Just my 2 cents.
No, you're right. I mean, honestly, I think one of the most powerful things about slow warriors of any guys right now is that they do have, you know, 4 of the best 1-drops in the game available to them, or sorry, 4 copies of 2 of the best 1-drops in the game available to them. And when the control deck is playing 1-drops that outclass the 1-drops that are available to the aggro decks, that ain't right. That's that don't
Speak
sit
for
well
yourself.
with me.
Speak for yourself.
All right.
I love it. I would never be caught dead in a tournament with 1 copy of either of Town Crier or Eternium Rover right now.
I'll hold you to that one. I don't know when you...
I said right now, so
Playing Hearthstone tournament.
I guess you'll hold that to me for the rest of the day. And
For the rest of right now. All right, we're done.
Isn't right now always taking place, though?
That's true. We're in a perpetual state of right now.
Yeah, because we're never in the future and we're never in the past.
No, right now.
Oh, boy. I'm held to this.
Oh,
for the
you
rest
messed
of my
up
life.
big.
2026. I'm playing a Hearthstone tournament, and I have 2 copies of Talent Card and Eternium Rover. And they're like, you are disqualified. Those are not in standard anymore. Nice start for Casey, but a Doomsayer looking to shut this down.
What to do? What to do?
Faceless Lurker ends up being the pickup off Shaggy as well, which, not really the quality of card that you're hoping to see.
There's one situation where that card has been good for me, and it's post-Star Megadillo. It just becomes a 5/10.
Yes. Yes, it does.
I love Ancient of War.
You must love Zephyrus then, because that guy comes up a lot.
Not that much.
Okay. Bunny Hopper choosing just the disruption play with the Doomsayer just allows himself a little bit of freedom on the follow-up. Potentially just to rip Arcane Intellect.
Pretty big change up here for Casey as well, taking his time.
Yeah.
Really thinking about this snip snap for the 2/1/1s as presents. If this were Bomb Warrior, I would agree.
Sure. See that distinction? If Casey is going to slow down in the matchup, then we might be in for a long one here, at least in game number 1.
What to do? What to do?
Because Bunny Hopper is for sure going to take his time.
You know, I guess something to note for Casey is that most of the time I've seen him play, we've been pretty deep into the format. Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh.
Luna's Pocket Galaxy off the Volpera Scoundrel.
Tell me more.
That scoundrel. You're not supposed to do that.
He's so adorable, though. How can that guy be a scoundrel? Look.
Well, wait till next turn. Sure, it gets blown up now, but it's already done the damage. Look.
I'm still not calling it a scoundrel. Casey immediately just says, all right, play minions.
We know how this works.
Yeah.
I see 10 health. I see a yellow Reno.
I see a salty Casey. I was about to do an in 3, 2, 1, and then I realized it was Bunny Hopper playing. Oh no, it would have worked! No, it wouldn't.
He started at 5.
Yeah. Maybe we would have got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something.
He's not, you know, that's not really salty. That looked somber to me.
Fair
Like,
enough.
jeez.
Yeah, fair enough.
Oh, look, I mean, he's got the boom. There's still some play to be had here. It's just very tough for Casey at this point. He's got through a couple points of damage, but he hasn't been able to substantiate the board.
Right. And now there's a Luna's Pocket Galaxy in effect. There is a dead Luna's Pocket Galaxy in the deck, which, you know, Casey can cling on to as a ray of light, but if he could see Bunny Hopper's hand, yes, the Antonidas is a big deal not being discounted. That is a very powerful minion, but there is a Calic Ghost, there is an Alex Straza, there is all kinds of nonsense thrown in there that is costing 1.
What to
Siamat,
do?
Tortolan Pilgrim,
What to
Barista
do?
Lynchin,
Yep.
Mountain Giant. That one's technically going to cost 0. Not the All-Stars this time. However, I think that the Arcane Keysmith is still a pretty good fill-in here. There's actually no weapons in the Warrior deck for Casey.
You missed your grand moment. Admirable was looking down at deck list, and then a Reckless Rocketeer appeared. I was very confused because a Reckless Rocketeer appeared, and the person to my right did not immediately lose their mind about how awesome that was. And then I looked over, and he was looking at deck lists, and everything was very clear.
I missed my moment.
Yeah.
God, the one that's never going to happen again.
No. I was honestly, when that Reckless Rocketeer appeared, I braced. Like, genuinely. Like, I expected the pop-off so hard.
I'm so
All right, Casey's suiting up. But the heavy hitters are going to have to come out eventually for Bunny Hopper. And there's one of them.
Oh my gosh. That's not okay.
The
Yeah, that's the salty.
The Casey Classic, I'll have you know.
That's the salty.
The sarcastic round of applause. The one-mana Alex off the top. Put you to 15. Draw a card, by the way. Let's keep it going.
He's gonna run out of board space.
Aztec's fine. Keep it at 5. Who cares?
He's gonna run out of board space. Why?
Oh, you don't play that, right? Like real talk, you don't play that.
I want you to think about how excited you expected me to be about a Reckless Rocketeer, and now consider not playing a one-mana Caligos that draws me a card. There is exactly a 0% chance that I don't play this Caligos.
Like, you're gonna get brawled here anyway.
Because I want to.
Okay, yeah, sure, fair point. Good point, well made. Moving on.
Poor Casey. We were supposed to have a nice game of Hearthstone here.
Yeah. Then Pocket Galaxy happened.
No, Volpera Scoundrel happened. The Galaxy's buried in the deck.
He was just being a good foxy little boy.
Job's done.
You know, I feel for Case in this one, but honestly, I just love watching this mage deck. It just does such wonderfully broken things.
No, I'm kind of right there.
Oh,
with you,
yeah, the
man.
Lunatics are out.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. What's the worst that could happen?
I do love watching it, though. Like, the more broken a deck is, the more I really enjoy watching it.
Was it Tony time? No, apparently it's not. Could have gone like Caligos, Tony, cast a spell for free, cast Rare Frost for 2 fireballs, right? Seems solid.
Yeah. I'm thinking about whipping this Blizzard out there to draw a card, though. Look, there are 2 things I like in games. Number 1, it's my thing killing your thing and staying alive, and number 2 is drawing lots of cards.
I love drawing cards.
Like, sure, you could play stuff, or you could draw cards.
Time runs out on me.
Yeah, Bunny Hopper agrees with you.
Behold the tools of creation.
Bunny still interested in just stretching out his resources a little bit. The shield block would have put some pay to the straight up Antonidas plan. So I guess building a board state does work out pretty well for Casey. Full path here will leave a 1 health reborn minion on the board, so Eternium Rover and solve that issue. Good sequencing as well, getting the 4 armor off it in the process before he needs to trade it off.
Yeah, I think that the big difference in this game right now is actually the 7-cost Archmage Insights. The fact that that card's not discounted means I think Casey has a chance. Bunny Hopper is not free to just make 6 fireballs in 1 turn.
Right.
He's limited pretty much to what he's going to have. And so the key for Casey is being able to eliminate this Caligos efficiently. And then having enough life to check Tony. So the Ray of Frost, I think, is going to change my perspective on this Archmage Antonidas a bit. But
well, you take the Cinderstorm. Yeah, exactly. Like, the Cinderstorm is free.
Oh,
you
just cast a spell.
You just cast it.
Yeah, the spell thing. I always forget about that.
You just rip it.
Yeah.
Huh?
You want 2 more fireballs, right?
A double... No, because he's playing Zilliax.
Unity, precision, perfection.
I am confused. I am very confused.
3/1/1's Brawl, shield block. Got to win the brawl, right? I guess Caligos could live.
This would be a good time for a master plan.
What is the secret, by the way? It came from the Keysmith, right? I've forgotten what it was. Can we check that out, please?
Well, it's not a counter spell.
No.
Job's done.
Play as advertised, shield block, some of the 3/1/1s, get the brawl done.
Okay.
1/1 does live.
There's still some game here.
So now Bunny Hopper sat with just 15 in hand. And there's an extra minion down to that brawl with his choice to go with the Rare Frost and the Ziliax instead of the Frostbolt on the previous turn. No value for that Barista to pick up. Puzzle box, question mark?
Number of cards in my hand always concerns me with Puzzle Box.
Sure.
There's so many cards that just add cards to your hand right now.
Yep, there we go.
Puzzle Box is in a very different situation than like the original Yogg was. Like the original Yogg very rarely overdrew you. There weren't that many card draw effects.
Well, also, I think it was being played in a metagame where the average hand size was lower just to begin with as well.
Yeah, definitely so. And Bunny Hopper is going to be diligent in eliminating mechs so that way they do not attach with Ziliax and make an impact. And Casey very much lamenting that.
Magic neutralized.
I don't know if I like this stack on. I think I would like to see that be more preserved.
In what way? Preserved, meaning
To hold it in hand, but I guess
hold the Beryllium Nullifier back?
no, the Vicious Scrap
Oh,
Hound.
hold the Vicious Scrap, okay.
And so I think that he recognized that Bunny Hopper just wasn't going to play a minion for a while, or when he did, that it was going to be so impactful that Casey was going to die to it.
Okay. Okay.
Timeout hits? Are you kidding? So Casey can't even deliver that damage? Tracking cuts the deck in half.
Oh, the Frost Nova.
To 1! Well, there's a timeout in place. That doesn't even matter.
Yeah. But like, if there could have been, I don't know, minion summoning effect, like Animal Companion afterwards or whatever.
The thing that matters is that timeout,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I mean, the Frost Nova would have mattered, if, in spite of that. But I digress. That's death. Bane of Dooms, connect face. That was a wacky game to end on with a puzzle box. I thought that game was going to end in a very different manner than a puzzle box.
Yeah, and really, Bunny Hopper only had kind of one good turn that entire game. Like, he got the Luna's Pocket Galaxy down, and then he drew the Stargazer Luna, and then that one turn he had was about the only, like, really, really powerful turn he had. It just goes to show what one turn can do in that mage deck.
Yeah, and especially like the timing of it too. The fact that it follows up after turn 5 instead of later on as it will be post balance patch. But it's such a like I can see where Casey's coming from on that one. I would be super frustrated at that spot too. But my gosh, it is so much fun to watch. It just does so many broken things, and I love that.
Yeah, that turn was hilarious. I think we did kind of just get into fits of laughter at the time as it was just perfect one-mana minion after one-mana minion coming off the top. Just Alex Straza, and then there's just a Caligos, and he's got so much good stuff going on, he just doesn't play a one-mana Caligos that turn. Like, that's how good his turn was.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Takes something else to be able to create a turn like that. But, we got to go to a break, and when we come back, we're going to be jumping back into this match right now. Bunny Hopper leads 1-0 over Casey. We're going to find out if he can tie it up and perhaps take the set himself. Needs back-to-back wins, though, so stay tuned.